orthomarketing.com. 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.
Well, hello, everybody in podcast land. This is Dean Steinman, President of Ortho Marketing, and we are back with another exciting podcast for you. And I'm very excited to have with me one of our dear friends and guests who've been with us many times before, and I'm super happy to have back with us Michelle Shimmin, founder of Shimmin Consulting, and we're here today to talk about 4 things to consider when hiring. Hello, Michelle. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me back. I always love joining you.
My pleasure. I always enjoy having you on. You're full of great information, full of enjoyment, big smile, your sunshine. So very happy to have you back with us. So just going to kind of jump in. So as a consultant and as you know, and a marketing person, I always hear the biggest issues. I'm sure you do as well. Is staff. It's always and correct me if I'm wrong, but every practice that's successful, they have a great staff on board. The ones that don't are not successful. Okay, so hiring is so important now. So we're going to talk today about, as I mentioned, 4 things to consider when hiring somebody for your practice. And it can be for any position, like, you know, but this is overall, you know, a guideline of what you should be doing. So first off, let's back up. When you meet with a client and if they come in and you're doing your analysis and we're talking about obviously employees, what's the number one issue that doctors are say they have a problem with in their office when it comes to staff, period?
Well, great question, Dean. And, I'll preface this information by saying this year has been not only unprecedented in what we've all dealt with our businesses and socially and what's gone on, but it's really completely changed the candidates and the employee market out there. So, when I talk to potential clients or clients of ours, typically what they recognize is they're unhappy with the culture of their practice, or they're unhappy with the results that the team is developing around that culture. Yet they don't recognize really what the ultimate challenge or problem is. And we're going to talk about that through a few of our other bullet points today. But really what it is down to one piece of it is a lack of clarity of what is really dialed down and expected from these specific team members, both in their behavior, in their job performance, everything, their role within the practice. And then how can we provide that high level of accountability if that individual is delivering on what is expected from them? So, that's been really a big challenge and an area that we work really hard on with our clients to develop and focus on, so that we can remove perception and feeling when we're talking about if this is the right team member and if they are delivering what we expect and need out of them. And if they're vested in our business.
Sure. I'm sure you've done the same thing, and I'm saying that running a company is hard. And I would say this: I love everything about what I do, except for being the boss. And I wouldn't be as successful as I am without my team. So my team is so important for everything, from a car dealership to a dental office. Staff is the driving force behind it. So let's talk about the 4 things today for a practice to consider when they're doing the hiring. First off, talk about employer brand. Okay,
yeah.
Tell a little bit about that.
So it's extremely important that we develop a very clear employer brand. This is really what sets you apart from any other practice or company, and it shows the candidates why they would want to work for you. It really should reflect your mission, your culture, your values, and really the experience that the team members are going to be joining in on. Think about it as our family. We want to invite others into our family, right? And when we're talking about what this brand is, it's, again, really, how are you going to set your practice apart to stand out. Think of the housing market right now and what it takes to really utilize setting your, as the buyer, what sets you apart to make you valuable and wanting others to seek you. And that's really what we want. Not only do we want to attract top talent, but we want to retain that top talent.
So how does one even go about promoting their brand when they're in the hiring process? How do they even get the name out there? Sometimes they even want to advertise who they are when looking for people. So where does this even come in the process?
Well, excellent. And this goes hand in hand in really setting your reputation apart to attract patients as well. But what you should do is evaluate and assess what percentage of your employees would even recommend your practice as a great place to work. Think about that question, right? And then check your business pages, your social media. Really, what message, what brand are you putting out there? And then just expand on that when you look into how to identify candidates, which is our next topic as well, and how you can really look for those candidates.
All right, so let's talk about that. So obviously you've got you hear the radio spots for Indeed, and you've got, uploaded to XYZ to reach, 100 different job posting programs. So what do you suggest somebody to do as first steps as far as where to find the right potential person?
Well, don't be afraid to use social media. Absolutely. Make sure that your post, again, is clear and that you recognize and remember that this is the first impression that the candidate will have of you and of the practice. So be sure to create a presence on social media that also aligns with your values and this employer brand. So look at specific, don't be afraid to find, because we are a niche industry, really, don't be afraid to look at niche job boards. So neighborhood social media posting sites. Where do we have an opportunity to share what we have available? Consider college recruiting as well. Look to your local college campus online job boards. And really, this can be done and targeted for healthcare and administrative or management areas of studied focus as well. So there's also great opportunities with that.
This is kind of like an overall question, but would you recommend to bring somebody in, depending on obviously on the level of the position, with experience, and then you might have to break them of bad habits, or with little experience and train them the right way?
Great question. Typically, we always are going to look for a candidate with experience. And with that, we circle back to really providing the clarity on what we expect out of this individual to really fit into our practice. And you can have 25 years experience as a chairside technician in orthodontics, and you can work with a different doctor that's going to have a slightly different preference or technique that we're going to need to adapt and adjust to. So that's really important as candidates and team members that we realize and recognize this. We also want to realize and recognize, and I'm speaking now to potential candidates and team members coming on, we never want to come into a new family or team group and try to always talk about what I used to do at my other job, or this is how we used to do it, or how I always did it here. Try to really adapt and fit into this practice and this team and this doctor's preferences. That's really important to build that trusted relationship that's necessary for relational success professionally.
All right, so now you found the right candidate, or you got their resume and you want to get them in. So it's time now to sit down and do an interview. Obviously, it's a local-based type of program. It's not, like in my industry, in my business, I have, people, my employees are thousands of miles away from me, hundreds of miles away. In an orthodontic office, local office, you have to be in there. So it's probably is it an in-person interview, the first step, would you say, or is it a Zoom just to get through it, or what, phone call? What's the first thing?
I would, yeah. Actually, let me share two more opportunities that I definitely want to make sure I get across in how to find candidates before we dive into this interview piece of
Okay.
it. But this is something also that we don't really see often, and I want to put it out there. But it's really, I highly recommend implementing or introducing an employee referral program. If you've assessed and analyzed that you have a team that would really recommend your practice as a great place to work, introduce an employee referral program. Because with these programs, and essentially just like when we tell our patients, we would love a practice full of patients just like you. Would you mind writing us a review? It's the same with our team members. If you have a great team member and quality team, I would love more and just more of those types of team members. So we really know that that can lower turnover rates. It provides often better quality hires and a shorter time to hire. And then another area that I really recommend is looking for those passive candidates. Passive candidates are those who actually are currently employed somewhere else and not actively looking for a job. But there have been studies out there that reflect that 85% of people that are employed would consider moving to another job. So if you run across somebody that really has a great personality and really has great customer service, don't be afraid to ask them, have you ever considered working in the dental environment? I think that you would really be an asset. Is that something you'd ever consider and like to possibly pursue? That can be.
When you say referral program, is that for monetarily?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Why not? It's going to save you a lot of time, energy, and resources in your hiring process. It can be very valuable to the practice.
So how do you, so that basically say that might be friends. Do you want people that are or outside the office to be buddy, or is that kind of crossing the line a bit? Because working as a colleague versus a friend might be very difficult line to handle there. So
yep, great question.
What do you suggest about that?
Yeah, great question. And you think about that with family members too. That's often a topic that is considered. And I would just recommend to evaluate the situation really individually, because I know family members that have worked for the same practice for 15, 20, 25 years together. And they're very, very successful. They're typically, one would be administrative and one would be clinical. Obviously an area of concern if the employees aren't happy or performing well, that if one leaves, another would leave. But everything circles back to providing that clarity with that high level of accountability. And then our last topic after we dive into the interviewing, we'll talk about how to develop our team members. And that goes hand in hand with making it a successful environment if you do have friends or family members that are working together. We do become friends. We do hope and desire.
Sure. Right. Yeah. I love when my guys hang out together outside work and they become friends and they go to kids' birthday parties together or hang out. And I think I love it. It's great. I'm happy, when I'm able to see people happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
All right. So now let's jump back into the interview process. Okay. So first step, do you recommend somebody doing it virtually just to pre-qualify them, just to get through the first one, or you get them in right away?
Yeah, so it also depends on where you've identified these. If this has been a passive candidate that you've pursued, it would be a little bit of a different process, and I would think that would jump right into first a Zoom or a face-to-face interview. If you're going through a pool of candidates, I really like a phone interview first. We really want to identify your top 2, 3, 4 candidates before you start to really do those face-to-face interviews, because it can be a really lengthy process and you can really identify those candidates that don't fit your needs pretty early on through phone or a Zoom. Zoom is a great way to start your interview process. One, you can get an idea of how technologically savvy the individual is. You can get an idea of the individual making eye contact with you, feeling prepared, how do they present themselves, and if it really meets what you're looking for the job and for your practice. And then once you identify your top top, 3-4 candidates, then I would bring them in for a face-to-face interview, show them around your practice, introduce them to your other team members, because we have to remember this is a two-way interview process, because it's important that we identify team members that are also meeting their needs and their desires, because that's where you find the ideal long-lasting fit.
So when it comes to the interview process, and you start even on the initial phone call, is it best for you to have a stock questions to ask? Is everyone different? And should you be doing the talking, or should they be doing the talking?
Great question. So really it depends on, I recommend being prepared, having a list of specific questions so that you can really be effective in the interview process. And whenever I'm interviewing, I'm also looking to see if this potential candidate is also asking me questions. I want to see that interaction. I really want to see that process where the interview is going two ways, really. Although as the potential employer, you are going to be the one driving, for obvious reasons, driving those questions. I'm always highly impressed when I have potential candidates asking questions about our expectations and exactly what we're looking for in a candidate. Those are very impressive questions to me to hear back as well. So to answer your question about the stock questions, what I do is, one, be prepared, have specific questions written out and ready to be asked so that you can write out the answers or write down any notes that you have. And it really should vary per position and what you're looking for. So for instance, if it's going to be a clinical assistant, sure, you're going to have your clinical questions, but we also want to know, how does this team work? How does this team member participate with teamwork? So we can really, ask questions such as, how important are team events for you? Which do you prefer and why? Teamwork or working alone? Or how would you deal with a teammate who wasn't doing their share of work? Those questions and how that potential candidate answers those questions gives you a lot of information about who this individual will be. If you're looking for more of a management position, you're going to ask some leadership questions, such as your team members are quitting one after another. What do you do? Or what do you expect from a manager? That answer is going to reflect what type of a manager this candidate would be as well. So you're going to tailor your questions per the position that you're looking for. And you're also going to tailor those questions based on your current team that you have as well, to see how are you going to not only fit into your current team, but enhance the current team that you have.
All right. So how long on average do you think the first online or phone interview should be?
So typically that's going to be probably 20 to 30 minutes long. And then if that candidate goes to that next level of interview processing where we're coming face to face, then I would probably expect about an hour to an hour and a half long interview, because at that point I'm also probably going to... Yeah, this is an opportunity for us to start to build a relationship, to see how well we're going to work together. Have that candidate observe part of your team in action, and part of maybe if it's an administrative role, have them observe the interaction with the patients and ensure that this actually is an extension of the brand that we talked about in the beginning.
So during the hour and a half in person, what percentage would you break it up and say, as far as the doctor being the speaking person or the employee being the speaker?
So you're probably, and this is just kind of shooting off the cuff, me, referencing back to how I do interviews, but it's typically going to be the doctor and or the team, probably about 70% of the communication, and the team member typically is about 30%. Now, those aren't recommendations. intentions of mine, but we do have to recognize I don't want a team member coming in really strong and dominant and taking over the process. I look for humility. I look for active listening. I look for active observation from team members. So as either an employer, a doctor, or a hiring manager, I'm going to facilitate a process where the team member can gather a lot of it from, the candidate can gather a lot of information, observe a lot of who we are, what parts of their potential role would be and what that would look like. And then of course, they're going to be asking questions along the way with that, but I would like them to, sit down with a few of the team members that they would be, working closely with, if you will. I've, recently, and I feel that there are a lot of practices that have gone through this, have hired individuals who literally quit after the second day or the first week. And to me, this is a huge disconnect in that whole interviewing process, because that team member was shown something completely different than what they're actually experiencing when they come into the practice. So our number one goal is to be through that clarity I talk so much about, but really showing them the reality of who we are, what we're looking for, what we desire, and what their participation in fitting into and enhancing our team, so that we don't run up against those struggles where the team member literally is quitting after 1 day or 1 week.
Right. And what's the number one thing somebody should consider when conducting an awesome interview? Or what's the one thing that should be in the back of your mind to make that interview process awesome? Are you trying to sell them? Do you want them to sell you? What's the one thing that you would say, okay, this is the cherry on top of the sundae?
That's a great question. And I'm glad that you said, are you trying to sell them or are they trying to sell you? We want to avoid that selling process. What we want to do is we want to really show them our brand and who we are, so that they actively desire to want to participate in it. It's the same as with our patients. Out of the experience that they have when they interact with the doctor, the hiring manager, and the team, they want to be a part of that. So when we look at, I don't want to provide any false ideas or thoughts or pie in the sky, because that's when you have a disconnect in actually what happens when the team member comes on. So I would recommend authenticity. I would recommend enthusiasm and reality. Really, just as if we can just lay everything out on the table and be as clear as possible, two-way. So what the employee is looking for and what the practice is looking for, that's really the greatest recipe for success in the hiring process.
Excellent. All right, so we're going to point number 4, employee development through review feedback. Okay.
That, and again,
background on that. Okay.
Excellent. Yep. Again, this is just really extending what those points that I just stated are, and you should set up a 1 week, a 30-day, a 90-day. Don't just wait for 90-day review where you sit down and you say, you're doing really good. This is the area I want you to keep working on. How are you? Do you have any questions? That's the most ineffective review process you can provide. So do a weekly check-in and sit down and show that you value this new team member and their experience and what do they need to be successful? What have we done well to support them this last week? And lay out what they need and what we need over the next 30 days. And then check in again. Really create an open door policy so that you can really develop your team members through this review process. And a review process should be about professional growth and development with your team members. And it should be interactive. They should participate in really identifying how well they're doing, the areas they're doing well to you, and then the areas where they need improvement and what they need to be successful in improving. And then you commit to that for them, and then you provide your feedback as well. So it's an interactive process, and that's how you develop your team members. And if you take a new candidate, really your goal should be to arm them for success. And those really only need to be 20, 30-minute check-ins with them, but make it formal, schedule it, and your employee will feel valued and they will feel supported. And this is how you develop vested team members that stay with your practice and deliver the results you look for.
All right. So, A, how often should this be going on? And B, how long should this be going on?
The review process,
Mm-hmm.
this development. So just
Correct.
as I stated with a new team member, 1 week, 30 days, 90 days, as often as needed. Don't wait for 90 days to have it be the first one. If the team member is needing more development, it needs to be more often. Write it down, make commitments together on what you'll do to support what they need, and have them commit to what they can and will do by when. With your traditional team, they absolutely at the minimum should be annually. You should write down goals the team member wants to accomplish over the next year, where they're going to grow and improve, and revisit that at the next annual review process. If you're looking to change behavior or develop new behavior, it should be more often. And this might be different with different team members. So don't be afraid to have those review processes. They don't need to be disciplinary. We need to look at them, maybe they would be, but we need to look at them as our commitment to grow and develop our team members professionally.
All right. So how does one even go about planning this and getting the resources to do it? Because orthodontists is focused on what they do, and it's directly outside their sphere of confidence or knowledge. So what would you recommend for them to do as far as resources to even put together a review program?
Well, they can contact me at any time and I'll send out some information. I know you're going to provide, we'll send some documents that they can have some simple parameters to be able to have as a resource as well. But identify if this is currently being done well, or if you need to set that up, and then implement somebody that can spearhead that for you. My team and I do this often for practices, and so they can contact us at any time to perform it for them. Or if they have a team member that's spearheading this process, we can provide the resources for them and the training and how to do that. But yeah, you're right. The doctor wants to be an orthodontist. They typically would have assistants alongside them to help perform that process.
Great. Excellent. All right. So with that said, final tip for somebody. So we've been through 4 different programs here, 4 different tips, from the employer brand to where to find the candidates, to conducting awesome interviews, to employee development through review feedback. So now when it comes to the final tip, when it comes to finding somebody, and you've got 2 really quality people that you both like, that you like both of them. Okay, what's the one tip that you would suggest somebody to say, okay, this is what I'm going to go this way versus this way, but right down the middle, what's the one thing that you think they should look at or do to kind of push them one way or the other?
Well, final tip, we should always be looking for our ideal team. So if you run across somebody that is just spectacular and you have these 2 candidates, hire them. You will build and grow into those team members, and don't be afraid to look at not afraid, or fear isn't the word that I want to use here, but be committed to not just putting a body in that position. Always be committed to growing and developing your team members. Don't be reactive when somebody turns in their 2-week notice. Be proactive in always creating and developing and maintaining your ideal team. And that's the pearl that I would provide. And again, doctors want to be orthodontists. I get that. And this is one of the most challenging, as you talked about in the very beginning, areas in running a business. So put somebody in place alongside you that can be that person, so that you can create and retain and attract top talent for your practice.
Great points. And also, this goes with any business, really. I'm sure it's orthodontic, industry we're in, but this is across the board for any business person that might be listening to this. Across, as an employer, I've had to bring on and to let go many, many, many people over the years, and it's my least favorite part of my job is human resources. But as a small business owner, it's one of the hats that I wear. And as an orthodontist, most probably, if you're have a smaller office, you're not a DSO, that you'll be wearing many hats as well. But it's a business. So obviously you love what you do and you're making people smile, but at the same time, this is part of running a business. So these tips are phenomenal. And Michelle has been around the block a bunch of times and worked with hundreds of practices on this. So guys, please take this to heart. She knows what she's talking about. So if somebody wanted to get a little more information, talk to you about the hiring process, just pick your brain. What's the best way for them to reach you and to get in touch with you?
Yeah, excellent. They can visit our website to learn about my team and my firm and at ortho-consulting.com, or they can email me directly and I'll provide some resources to them at Michelle, Michelle, at ortho-consulting.
Excellent. Great. And one final question for you. So far today, what made you smile?
You made me smile today. As you can see, I'm smiling a lot here. I woke up and there was a beautiful blue sky and sunshine, a great cup of coffee. It was a great morning to wake up. I was looking forward to joining you today, and I love sharing information. I love supporting our industry in any way that I can, and these opportunities make me feel very grateful. So this made me smile today. Thank you, Dean.
Oh, my pleasure. You made ditto. As you can see, I got a big smile on my face too. So I always love speaking with you, and thanks so much for these great pearls here. So with that said, everybody in podcast land, thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned. Michelle will be back with another episode as far as more tips coming down the pike. And everybody out there, be safe, be happy, keep smiling. Thanks. This is Dean from Ortho Marketing. Bye-bye.
Orthomarketing.com, 360-degree digital marketing solutions for your practice.